Well, this is about the third time I've tried to make this video on uh, a little overview of what I've dug in the last 2 weeks, the past 2 weeks, or week and a half anyway. We're going to start off with the first dump that I started out with, and that was a 1900s, 1910 dump. Start out with one of the first bottles I found. And this is a bitter quill mineral water bottle. It usually has Haliojanus or some name on the bottom. It's German or Czech. It has an applied lip there, and it's a little rolled, whittled. These are bottles that are popular because of the cold mold technique of blowing glass in a cold mold and give it that whittle effect. Saw me dig, if you watched the video, this Florida water style bottle. Generally it says Murray's, New York, but in my case it was just plain, but kept it anyway because it's a cool looking bottle. Here's one I didn't show digging, and it just because it was such a hard dig and I didn't know what was coming up. Half the time I'm busting through hard stuff. It's just really bad. So this was in there and I picked it up in Cause ink. They're not that common, especially with the embossing in the front, but Cause is a very popular ink to find. Of course, Carter's is the main game when it comes to inks of the turn of the century. You can't miss any extracts, and this one is one of the most popular. Souders from Dayton, Ohio. This has a little cathedral design under the neck. Sometimes there's a swan or some kind of bird embossed on it. This one doesn't have that. Blown in the mold. Cool little bottle. I generally don't keep them, but you know, when things are thin, pick up anything you can. Hicks Caperdine, real popular bottle. Everybody finds these if they're digging in a turn of the century dump, especially around here. And it was for headaches, and I guess people had a lot of them back then. And oh, let me see. The round slug-plated, square-shouldered flask, nothing on it. Has that round flask, has that round slug plate with nothing on it. The old, these are so common that generally I don't pick them up. But this is an old version. It has the Louisville, Kentucky, and San Francisco California fig syrup. Not a bit of fig in it at the time. And last but not least, the round bottom ginger ale from England. These were common. They sometimes called ballast bottles because they were shipped by the thousands here in America. America didn't produce many, but the British were big on the round bottoms. The Schweppes design. They had Hamiltons. They were all pretty cool bottles on the other side of the pond. You can find a variety. Here we're just generally stuck with this or a Belfast. Now jumping over to the 1930s, there's not a lot of variety. Well, I should take that back. There is a lot of variety in the 1930s dump. It's just that this dump that I'm particularly in, nothing comes up whole, so you're limited to what comes up that is in one piece to keep. Cracked, chipped pieces I generally do not keep. I don't need those bottles. I have enough. This is generally my hobby, and I need all the space I can get. Let's start out with some beer bottles. This one is Esslinger's from Philadelphia, 12-ounce beer. They were generally the size back in those days. Generally very plain bottle. Nothing too special. Had a paper label like a lot of them did back then. The Hortons is a more interesting beer bottle. It's from New York City. and it was the Horton Brewing, New York. Got the address. Cool bottle. Probably hadn't changed from the 20s, and it was machine made. And of course, it's in Owens, Illinois, like most of these bottles. Although I do have a few. This one is probably a Wheaton. Has a W on the bottom. It's made for Walpole glass, but Henry Walpole was prolific from Philadelphia. He made a lot of bottles, and they were even produced in the 1930s. And this is your standard Henry Walpole medicine company. Here's an interesting phrase on this bottle. This bottle loaned by the F.W. Fitch Company. Now, this is a hair tonic. I'm guaranteeing you that. And it is also in Owens, Illinois, machine made. In bad shape, really, as far as the condition of it is. It's not banged or dinged, but it is a little sick. But that was interesting. I picked that up because of the weird, you loan out a bottle, you're supposed to return it after you've emptied it. I don't see the purpose. Now, the last soda here is very local. I know it's probably a local bottler, and it does say Coca-Cola bottling. It's not your typical Coca-Cola bottle. It was probably a ginger ale put out by a local bottler, and they had free advertising for their own company as long as they stuck Coke on it somewhere. So, although it was a Coke bottling plant, this bottler also bottled their own stuff using those bottles. Going to the whiskeys, I got lucky again and picked up another Virginia. Now, this is not a whiskey, this is a wine bottle. It's Garrett wine. And this was one of those, they call it like a Sneaky Pete kind of flip, pocket flask. And it was, as you can see, it's a pretty nice bottle. I found one before, and I really like these. They're heavily embossed, like most Garrett's were back in the day. The other whiskey that I came up with was this one. Now, I found out there's a flash crack. Now, that's the drawback about these bottles when you're digging them in heavy mud. And this one had sort of, you see that carnival glass patina on it, so it has a flash crack, but it's still a nice bottle. Golden Wedding, one of those old bottles that started during Prohibition, and I found a lot of these that were in better shape than this, and I have shown them in previous videos. Great bottle. I think the glass company looks like it has that little pawn on it, and I know the name of that company. They made a lot of tumblers and things of that nature. This, of course, is just a salt shaker, and it's a cool little bottle, little jar, whatever you want to call them. I like that because it's green. And this here is a bigger version of these bottle I find a lot of, and this was an Anchor Hawking, I think, or Hawking glass. This was one of those, no, I know it, White House Vinegar Company. There you go, White House. They put out a lot of different jars. I like the ones with the White House actually on them. This one is probably some preserve candy. I don't know. I can't tell you what was in this, but it was a preserve of some sort, and I like it because it's a bigger size. I find them a lot smaller than this. Last but not least, the only real true artifact was this little porcelain Japanese, very well sculptured doll. I only found one arm, unfortunately. Where the rest of it went, I don't know. being a big industrial dump with all kinds of crap in there, I was lucky to find that in one piece. That was in a area heavily burned. You can see that although there aren't any real super stains on it, this little doll must have gotten really hot at one point, because it was in a deep orange rust layer, which indicates high burnage. So there it is, my review for the week. I tried to do this just for people who want to see them cleaned up. You see me digging them if you watch my videos, and that's Sunrunner bottle digging. So check that out, and I have hundreds of videos on there, and I've been all over digging. This is what's coming down to it. 1930s. Well, you know, when I started digging in the 1970s, 30s weren't too far away, and you know, they weren't impressive. But as we go further, you're looking at bottles now that are 70 and 80 years old. Now that makes a difference. People don't live as long as some of these bottles have been around. So there you go for the week. See you later. Bye.